Fall camp starts today. Who's on the clock? I tell you in this episode. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. Happy Friday. Happy first day of fall camp Friday. A lot of F's in there. But we have an A-plus show for you. Boom. Starting off with a pun. There we go. Happy you guys for joining us along. I appreciate you guys, and shout out to everyone that for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, all those things. This summer, I've been telling you guys nonstop, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every single day. Cannot beat that. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, guys, welcome in. I appreciate you guys joining us. Fun episode today. Fall camp started. We're going to spend the entire episode talking about what I'm looking forward to most and what I want to see most when I get to, just like the rest of you, read up tomorrow, or I guess later today, since this is Friday, about what happened on day one of fall camp. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, but I also want to talk about some guys that I feel like are a little bit on the clock. What I want to see most, from the very limited things we'll see from day one of practice, we're 29 days till kickoff, but what I'm looking forward to most, and let's just start with the quarterback situation with Lenora Sellers. I think that's a huge, huge talking point, obviously, as with any team heading into fall camp. Now, he is the established starter, I think, right? And I use the word established a little bit loosely there because he's not somebody that has a start under his belt. Robbie Ashford is. Robbie Ashford's a guy that has shined at times, where, especially in some of the times, some of his time spent at Auburn as a starting quarterback in 2022. But this is going to be Lenora Sellers' team going into fall camp, and he will be taking the reps as QB1 when practice starts. Now, we've talked a lot about what he can provide, especially with his legs, right? Like a very physical, big runner, 6'3", 240, all of that. And on an offense that when you look at, at some of the skill positions, especially kind of undersized at spots, that's a guy that is going to be probably used in the running game, and especially if you're not as healthy at the running back position to start camp. But what I want to see most out of Lenora Sellers early, I want to see the accuracy with his arm, and I want to see how he is leading those receivers. And mainly, not even just the leadership standpoint. What I want to see most is how is that connection built from this past offseason? Like how much work are we going to be seeing that has noticeably been put in? Like the timing, how much on the same page is he going to be on with these receivers? Because the receiving group, guys, as we've talked about a bunch, there's not a ton of returning faces. You got Doty, who had 13 catches last year, and you got Nick Harbor, who had 12. And that's pretty much it from a returning production standpoint at that position, at least that was in Garnet and Black a year ago. Now, listen, I got out my magazine. I'm all fired up here. There's one guy we're going to talk about here later that I have glossed over for a full month, and I'm shooting myself in the foot over it, that we just have not talked enough about. But Gage Lavardian. I'm never going to pronounce this name right ever. I just need to quit. I'm just going to call him Gage L. Okay. Him coming in and the amount of production he's had and coming in from the portal, what does that look like? Because that's a guy that's I think from a speed standpoint, he's not Nick Harbor, but he's a guy that can play inside, he can play outside, he can play the slot, he can play the X, whatever you need from that. That's a guy that I think is going to be very versatile in this offense. And I think somebody that early in camp could shine. Same with Maz Bennett, freshman, former 4-star. Looking forward to see what he looks like, because as we get closer, I'm very high and excited on Nick Harbor, but I also kind of expect early on in the camp, I'm a little bit worried if he's, going to have to play catch up a little bit, because he didn't do anything besides run track all spring. And I still say you make that guy a focal point of the offense because he is your best athlete on either side of the football. But going back to the original part, Lenora Sellers, what do we look like in terms of a connection standpoint with these receivers, with the tight ends, because this is the thing where you got to hit the ground running. And we've talked about how important it is to get off to a good start in the month of September. I want to see how on the same page he is with these receivers. I'll tell you another one that we have really glossed over way more than we should have, and I'll probably fail at saying his name too, but Campbell from Nevada, the kid you got post-spring from the portal, just from a size standpoint, the need that he fills as a receiver is, I think, something that I, for one, have definitely glossed over. I mean, like we did bring this up in terms of the recruiting. When you're bringing in some of these guys at receiver, a lot of kids, I don't want to say they're undersized, but they're not exactly physically imposing at the receiver position. So 8 of the 12 guys you currently had on the roster in the spring are under 6 feet tall. Campbell is not one of them. So him, Harbor, some of these other guys, like how much size will be in the rotation, I think consistently will also be something I'm looking forward to. I tell you what, staying on the offense, man, like what do we look like at running back? Because if Rocket Sanders, I know he stayed on, he's lost weight. He's down to, I think what he said, 228. He's a guy that stayed on campus throughout May with the O-line and tried to work and continue to rehab and get healthy. Excited to see that. Now, if he can't go, what does that look like? Does Attaway from North Texas, who's got what, like, I think well over 1,000 yards in his career, like, does he come in? You've got depth there, Juju McDowell. Like, there's other guys here just looking through it where if he's not ready to go day one, I hate to say it, like I hope that the goal is like, man, I hope Rocket Sanders is ready to feast in this offense early and often. But if he's not 1,000, percent ready to go, he's not 100%. It's a long season, and I think you do have depth there, and you've got veteran depth there at running back. Where like you might not be in the worst position if he's not ready to go on day one or in game one, anything like that. Now, I'm excited to see what he looks like because that's a guy, man, 2 years ago where he was in the best league in the country. He was one of the best players in that league. So if he can get back to that form, I'm very excited to see that. Now, what's he going to be running behind? There's another thing I'm excited for. On the clock, who's taking over that right tackle position? You return 4 dudes that are starters from a year ago. You got a lot of younger guys from a talent standpoint that are going to fill in that too deep on the offensive line. But I love the fact that you've got some veteran depth there as well. And is it a situation where we see Josiah Thompson come in and play right away? Is it a situation where right now, I think looking at this right now, Case and Henry, he was the first player selected in the spring game, right? He's only a sophomore, battled through some injuries. He could be your start right tackle. The one thing on the offensive line that I think, and I wanted to do a show about this the other day and really focus an entire segment on this, but I shockingly somehow got COVID, which I feel like has happened like twice this year, just against all odds. But the offensive line, Cole Kubik and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago, and he brought up the fact that like you see this at a lot of other places. You saw it like Bama last year and a couple other places the past couple of years, and he mentioned Auburn obviously because we were discussing Auburn. But when I brought up Carolina, he was like, one thing that's gonna be really interesting to watch that O-line is you could almost bet any amount of money. You could do it on FanDuel that the starting 5 on day one, not just a fall camp, but really game 1 too. I bet you it's not the same starting 5 by the end of the season. And I don't mean that like somebody is going to lose their starting job or that starting 5 is not going to be good enough up front or whatever. But it sometimes takes a while to figure out the right mix of people, right? Like kind of shuffling a little bit of guys around different positions and see if you got some versatility up there. And I think Sean Elliott, even though he's coming in to coach tight ends, he's a guy that'll be able to eye some of that as well. I think Carolina's going to be way tougher up front than people realize, especially with the additions they've made. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see some shuffling to try to figure out like not just the best 5, but like the right 5 and the right 5, like the right combination of those 5 on the offensive line. I'm real excited to see that because I think that's something you're going to be able to tinker with, which you really didn't have an opportunity to do the last couple of years with Shane Beamer, where the depth was just so limited. Now you have the options like, hey, listen, like, what if we move this guy to here? What if we switch this person here? Like you've got options to figure out, like, again, Doesn't have to be your most talented 5, because if that's the case, Josiah Thompson's probably going to start day 1, right? We don't know what's going to happen. But the best combination of the best 5, that's what I can't wait to see. That I'm really excited to see that up front from the offensive line. Anyway, we have hit the ground running, man. I'm so fired up that we have fall practice today. We had a football game last night on what do you call it versus an NFL game, but still it was football nonetheless. We've officially hit the month of August. There's college football played this month. I am very excited about it. I hope you guys are as well. And listen, if you cannot tell the passion that I have for this, I'll tell you another group that has a lot of passion as well, and that is eBay Motors, guys. Shout out to our good friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what gets your ride or die alive, and what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights. If you love Fast and Furious, you'll love those, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You will always find exactly what you're looking for, and that is with eBay Motors. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Motors and eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. You know, halfway through that, I was trying to contain myself to not make a joke about UGA, so I won't. Even though I kind of just did. So there's that. All right. Make sure you stick around for our second part of the show. We're going to continue talking about what I'm looking forward to most of the fall camp and who is on the clock. We're going to shift over a little bit to the defensive side of the ball and talk about that as well, and some things that we can look forward to as soon as fall camp kicks off here today in the 803. Very excited for it. So make sure you are sticking around for that. All right, but first and foremost, guys, I want to talk to you guys again. Listen, I don't know, like I've taken a little bit of a break from watching ESPN and Fox Sports and all that kind of stuff, FS1, over the last couple of days because the Olympics are on. So I've been watching a lot of Peacock. But if you're unlike me and you have been watching a lot of Fox Sports or ESPN or TV all day, every day, do you ever find the need to have to turn down the volume constantly because of all the shouting? If that's the case, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, guys, back at it here. We're talking about the people and the players that are on the clock here as the fall camp opens in Columbia today for South Carolina. Day one, man. Just I mean, everyone reported yesterday. You had Ray Tanner speak to the team. Just a very exciting time in all of college football, but especially here at South Carolina. I'm very, very pumped for it. We talked a lot about the offense, and I kind of jumped all over the place about some guys that I'm looking forward to and who's on the clock and who I'm really looking at to see what they look like as fall camp kicks off. Defensive side of the ball. I'll tell you a guy that we have not talked enough about. And when I say we, I mean me. It's my responsibility. I'm the one that runs the show. So it's my fault. And I've brought him up a couple times because I think I got to talk to him up close and personal at Media Days a year ago. And he was just such a charismatic and like genuinely good young man. I hate to say that. I'm making myself feel very old and sound very old. But Tonka Hemingway, just plugged right in the middle of this defense. We are going to see a little bit different style, I feel like, in this year's version of what Clayton White is going to throw out on the field. And you're not going to be in like a very typical defensive alignment or formation. Like you're going to be in this like flex nickel, which is going to be, you know, sometimes a 4-2-5, sometimes a 3-3-5. We'll see. And I think that's the right move. Like you don't want to get gashed up front with the run by any means. And I don't think you necessarily will. Because like I said, you got guys like Tonka Hemingway and people that you can, and some size that you can fit into those, what do you call it, in like run fits in general, but also like in some like plugging gaps in the middle of that defense, I think you're going to be fine there, right? But what I do wonder, because like if the strength of this defense is the secondary, then yeah, it makes sense to have as many of those dudes on the field because let's face it, like outside of Debo Williams, the front seven, there's a lot of mystery there. There's some good athletes, man. I mean, like obviously very, very excited about the possibility of what a guy like Dylan Stewart can do, right? Desmond Yu is another guy that I'm excited about as like a sophomore coming in at like 6'6", 240 plus, right? And that's just from spring. So, he's gotten bigger. Excited to see what that kind of kid can do up front, especially in the D line. But like, again, it's not going to be a traditional situation where it's like, you're going to have, 4-3, four dudes with their hand in the dirt across the line. You're not going to see that, right? You will have, I think, in this variation of the defense, you will have the anchor of it in the middle will be guys like Tonka Hemingway. And I think that's a guy that I have really, really overlooked, partially because it's like you kind of know what you got with him. Like he is just a solid, dependable dude that is just you plug him in the middle and let him go to work. And I think the more that I thought about this for the show, it's almost the reason why I feel like I overlooked it is because it's like, oh yeah, we got that. Like we're good there. Right. Like it's almost like one of the same reasons we haven't talked about Debo Williams as much. Now, granted, Debo Williams, I think, is a better player and has like probably a little bit more upside potentially than Tonka. That's not a knock on Hemingway at all, but from a production standpoint, especially. But like you got Debo in your back pocket, and you're like, we got that, we're fine there. How does outside of Hemingway, what do we look like up front here with like the defensive end? I'm excited that you added 6 dudes from the portal, right? Specifically for the front 7. And that is going to be an overhauled front 7. And I keep saying front 7, and it's going to be a front 6, like I just said. So I'll have to get used to that. But in this flex nickel, right, defense, what do you put out on the edge and feel comfortable with? Because I want to see Dylan Stewart get out there on third down, pin his ears back, and get after the quarterback, right? Like, I mean, Gata, man, like get after that ass like immediately. And I want to see an uptick in production from the defensive ends and from the edge rushers and getting upfield and getting after the quarterback. You were, you've been 11th or worse in sacks in the SEC in 3 of the last 4 years, right? I want to see what that looks like, and I want those guys to be able to eat in the system. I don't know if they will day one, and I also don't know if that's going to be like an every down situation for them because, from a size standpoint, like I told you the pictures that Stewart had coming out of summer workouts, and the kid looks like a physical specimen. But what is it going to look like, especially across the D line, in this specific formation, especially if you're in a 3-3-5, right? 4-2-5 is a little bit different. And I think that's probably where they'll live a little bit more. But like if you're in a 3-3-5, I wonder what that's going to look like. I think you could plug in Tonka right in the middle, right? But who do you bookend him with, right? Is it Kennard? Is it Edmond as well? Like it makes sense to. I mean, Kennard was great here 2 years ago, and then was kind of underwhelming and at Florida State. Of course, he was playing behind a couple of dudes that are very, very high caliber players. But like now coming back after a year, and you at least have a veteran leader at that position, what does that look like, especially off the edge? The other thing is this. I think outside of Debo, who is going to step up at linebacker? Because you do have a couple guys. And listen, I am going to probably kick myself later for this. But just from the underwear Olympics side of it, and I say that to be funny, but like I try not to get wrapped up in stuff that you see on like NFL draft combines and stuff like that. But sometimes there's some dudes that you're like, I'm going to get wrapped up in that. Demetrius Knight Jr. Now, like at linebacker, especially if you are in a 4-2-5, that's a dude I feel like could potentially see the field a lot. They clocked him running 21.5 miles an hour as a linebacker. That's a guy that I think could see the field a lot in that formation. So if you're in this nickel flex, which is where you're going to operate out of the most, I'm excited to see where that kid could end up being, even though he's slotted as a backup right now, right? And the other side of this is I think that we know what we have, like I said, with Debo. Like Debo Williams is one of the best linebackers in this conference, and he's continuously overlooked from a leadership standpoint, I want to see what it looks like day one of not just like, getting after guys, but like his knowledge of the defense and where everyone else needs to be. Where's that? Like, is it even more advanced than it was a year ago? Because if so, man, it's always great to have a D coordinator on the field, and especially in this day and age with all the different kind of, offenses and hurry up and then spread and like, you know, like you don't have to play Sarkisian, but you do have to play Kiffin. Those types of offenses where you've got motion everywhere and all this window dressing, it's always good to have a guy like Debo Williams on the field. So where has he progressed his knowledge of not only of like his role in this defense, but knowing where everyone else is supposed to be as well? Because this is a unit that everyone is expecting to take a step forward, right? And I fully believe it is. I'm getting excited right now just talking about it. They are going to be better at every single level on that defense. Every single level, they will be better on that defense. So, like what does that look like in terms of I would love to see this kid. It almost sounds stupid because it's like I don't know how much bigger his star can shine, but I want to see what it looks like in terms of the leadership that he has taken in yet another year in this defense, and especially in commanding that front seven. And then you look in the back five, front six. Pardon me again. You look at the back five, right in the secondary. Like obviously, what you have with Imanwari and everything he was able to do last year. He's your returning, interceptions leader, all that kind of stuff. Fortunate corner, I think. Like obviously, he's locked down one of those positions, right? Who takes the other one? Like Jalen Kilgore is a guy that I think is like really, really good. You're most likely going to still see him in nickel, I guess, right? Like, but if he takes another step forward, right? Because he was already a true freshman All-American last year after the season with 24/7 Sports. Several of my friends and several of y'all on Twitter have reported back to me numerous times, by the way, about how much of a difference maker that kid's been in on the defense of their dynasty mode in college ball. What do you call it? 25 on like the new video game that came out. But like, I want to know how much better and like, how do I say this without sounding like make it too redundant and elementary? But like, that's going to be a real physical secondary. I want to know how much more physical they are going to be, especially on the boundaries and at corner, because you're going to face a lot of dudes like Ole Miss game. You're going to have a lot of big dudes. You are going to need to be able to get physical and jam people off the line. And I want to know what that's going to look like. And the other thing is too, like, I hope this doesn't happen, but like you have to be, they have to be even better than they were a year ago, and improve as much as we think they will improve. Especially if, I guess is what I'm trying to say, especially if that edge rush isn't getting home. Like if I think, like I said, they should be better at every single level. But if you are not getting from a production standpoint, the hurries and the pressures and the QB knockdowns and sacks again, that adds even more pressure on the back end of your defense. And I want to know how much more physical those dudes are going to look going into this year. Man, I'm excited. There's just the thing is, like, I've gone up and down this roster and we've talked about it for a month now, right, on the show. And we're finally at fall camp. So now we can actually like report back from things we were seeing at practice, which I'm very excited about. But the thing is, man, like you just I keep scrolling through and I'm like, who else can we talk about? Who else can we talk about? We didn't talk about TJ Sanders. We didn't talk about numerous other guys on defense. And there's still other names that someone's going to pop, right? Like somebody is going to pop in the preseason, most likely, especially in that receiver group. But someone is going to pop that I didn't at least see coming. And somebody, I'm sure in the YouTube comments, will tell me that they saw coming. And I can't wait for that either. But I'm so geared up for it. I will tell you what, we will close out with one last position unit and person that I think is on the clock that I'm really excited to see, because I think there's going to be an expected drop off, and I don't know if they necessarily should be, but we will get to that after the break. Before we get to the break, I want to tell you one more thing about our good friends at FanDuel. Guys, I've been bragging about using FanDuel for quite some time. Hopefully, you guys, if you have been using FanDuel, you've been making some money in the Olympics, maybe betting some of the props for Asia Wilson. I don't know. It's been a lot of fun watching the Olympics, especially since some of the Gamecocks represent over there in Paris. But also, want to give a shout out to what FanDuel is doing, especially with Major League Baseball, guys. I love sports. They're ramping up finally. I never want them to stop. But as we're still kind of in this preseason football mode, we have the Olympics, we have Major League Baseball. We do get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But the good news is, with our good friends at FanDuel, they keep me and they keep sports going whenever and wherever I want. All I have to do is open up the app, dream up any bets I'm in the mood for, and boom, there you go. FanDuel is hooking up all customers this summer with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Every single day, there is something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, guys, when we come back, we will finish out today's show, previewing the last couple of things before fall camp begins. So make sure you stick around for that. We'll be right. All right, guys, welcome back into Locked On Gamecocks. We're finishing out the last part of the show today before fall camp starts. And listen, we've talked a lot about the players. There's one position that I think is kind of unique. We talk about Beamer ball a lot. We talk about special teams. And I know you lose Jeter, right? Kid was 23 to 25, 92% from field goals last 2 years. You do return Kai Kroger. Listen, there's a world where, I mean, screw it. Maybe we just put Kai Kroger back there at quarterback, and you just run some sort of triple option with him, Ashford, and Sellers. Because that's a dude that has 3 touchdown passes and is 7 of 8 all time in his completion percentage. And if you don't think that's important, that he could probably start at a place like Auburn, for instance. But listen, here's the thing: you lose Limbo, and people want to give him credit, obviously, for he was the special teams coordinator. He had 14 block kicks, all those things. And he was a phenomenal coach, especially on special teams. You bring in a guy like Deacon Millis from Texas. And if you listen, if you talk to anybody close to Texas, which if you do, Godspeed to you, because they love to talk about Texas a lot. But I did this a while back before media days, and they had just rave reviews about Deacon Mills, who's not the main guy for special teams. That was a dude, I cannot remember his name. He just got married this past week, and I cannot believe I'm drawing a blank on this. You should Google this because it's worth a Google, to quote the campaign. The main guy is Jeff something, and he just got married. So congratulations to him. And I remember seeing the headline because he got married to his wife, who was a former stripper whose name was Pole Assassin and had a pet monkey that bit a child on Halloween a few years back. Anyway, I say all that to say that was the main special teams guy, and Deacon Millis was not in the lead role, I'll say. But Texas dudes had nothing but rave reviews about him, right? Also, a guy that just listen. Like 30 years of NFL experience, right? I'm looking at the magazine right now from Lindy's, and it says he's got his work cut out for him to make special teams great this year. I don't know if that's entirely true. You still got Beamer ball, right? And you still get Kroger back. And I think that like you want to hope that you don't have a bunch of games come down to field goals anyway. But the creativity, this is what I don't think you'll see a ton of this in fall camp, but I will say he's on the clock for me because of this. From a creative standpoint, what are you able to dial up and draw up in the special teams? Because that's also a thing that just from like the doldrums and the dog days of two-a-days and fall camp and all that kind of stuff, that's like something that gets the kids excited, right? And the players excited. What kind of creativity are you going to be able to drum up that maybe we have seen somewhat mirrored in the past, but also like new and creative, and keep this thing going, because it has truly been one of the more special teams units in the entire country. So yeah, you could say he's got his work cut out for him, but I'm excited for it. And he's got dudes in place still, right? I mean, like listen, a guy's coming off a career average of 43.9 yards per punt. That is rare air. as a punter. That's very, very good. So I'm excited for that. The other one is this, and I am so excited for Sean Elliott to be back in Columbia. We did a full episode on him earlier in the year, and I just from day one, and I don't think it's just going to be on at his position unit. You know, he's coaching tight ends. I think it will have a trickle down effect on not just his unit, but the offensive line and the rest of the offense. And I want to see if it trickles down to the rest of the team. The intensity going into this season. Beamer is such a fun-loving dude, but I feel like going into this year, there's a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, especially. And I think you're going to see it kind of filter down and trickle down into the rest of the team and come out with a bit of a tenacity that we might not have seen in fall camp from these guys before. It was because, listen, going into last year, you had some people, as Beamer brought up at media days, kind of thought they might be a sleeper in terms of competing in the SC East and had them finishing as some people's highest second in the division. This year, you don't have a lot of that. You don't have a ton of positive optimism, like we've talked about a ton, from outside of those four walls in the locker room and then outside those white lines on the practice field. So I think that the tenacity you're going to see from that coaching staff especially is going to be really fun and something I'm also looking forward to. So that is the last thing. We'll get it kicked off, man. And the next time that we talk, which will be later tonight, probably, or early Saturday. So make sure you tune in for a special weekend episode. We will have actual reports back from fall camp at the first days of practice. So appreciate you guys listening. Make sure you are liking and subscribing and everything on the YouTube channel. Helps us out, helps me out. If you guys have any questions going into next week, things you want to see covered, questions about what's going on in camp, people I need to reach out to, whatever, let me know. Follow us on social media, Locked On SC. Follow me on social media at Vern Funquist CFB as well. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of the weekend. Also, to the one guy in the YouTube comments who's very upset about my lack of Carolina hats. First off, I'm wearing one right now. It says Beamer Ball on the back. Okay. Here, look, I'll prove it to you. There you go. I just don't like this part of it because it looks weird. So I have Carolina hats, but I've also got two more coming in the mail because you've been upset enough about it. The bosses saw it. They heard your cries, and so did I. So we'll be getting some new headgear for me on the next couple episodes. So there you go. I appreciate you guys chiming in. All your feedback is welcome as always. But listen, before you go off for the weekend, want to remind you, thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen every day. But for your second listen, make sure you enjoy Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an excited season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Stay with me, guys, every day. All right. Y'all have a great, fantastic weekend. We will talk to y'all soon. Adios.